this is a pretty well documented composer, Beethoven. Are you telling Bach? I can understand. You barely wrote anything about music, just a few things, scraps
Mhm.
here and there. But Beethoven, you're telling me in letters and all sorts of that. Has he ever really explained like his theoretical process, or that's really still we have to fight over it?
Yeah, we have one excellent, fantastic letter. This is something that unfortunately got cut from my dissertation, and I had to get cut from this article because MTO has a word limit now,
Yeah.
which is a bummer. But yeah, there's God, it's such a fantastic letter. So Beethoven receives a note from a string quartet, and they're asking him about a 30-second note. And I can't remember which piece it is. I can pull up um, the paper, but they're asking Beethoven about a 30-second note in one of his pieces, and they say, should it be this note or this note? Beethoven writes a 3-page response back and says, no, it must be this note, and he gives an explanation in thorough bass. He says this is what it is in thorough bass, and he also tells us about the fundamental bass. And so he
Ah,
was willing to explain a 30-second note in his piece in great detail. So if pressed, he could tell you why it was there. Of course, I think when he's composing,
yeah.
we're not thinking about all these things. Just like when I type, if I type a sentence, I'm not thinking, oh, I better press each key. It just happens, right?
Right. Right.
But if someone asks me, you put a T at the end of the word cat there, like, did you mean that? Like, yes, and I can tell you why, right?
What was that's the again? This is the second time you've given me another crazy anecdote that I've, I've never. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Wow, that
I
should be
I,
well known.
I,
Could you
I should pull up
share that
the
anecdote? Where
scholar
the
of the.
source for that anecdote? People
Yeah,
would be
it's
so fascinated by
oh,
that.
let me pull up the. I was thinking about writing a book on Beethoven, but we'll see.
And by the way, that guest book with that organ competition is. Do we have any sort of uh, response or person who was there as a viewer of that, or is it just a note in the
Yeah,
guest
so
book?
yeah, Julia Range, she's a Beethoven scholar at the Beethoven House. She verified that for me. She's the one who notified me of this source, and so she looked into the correspondence between, well, basically whether Fogler was in Bonn or not, and the
Yeah.
evidence now I think is quite conclusive that he
Mm.
did visit Bonn. It's not clear how many times he visited Bonn. I think he might have been in Bonn 2 to potentially 3 times. So the source is by Jonas, so Oswald Jonas, and it's from 1952 in the Musical Quarterly, and it's called "A Lesson with Beethoven by Correspondence," and it's just fantastic. And so Beethoven writes the letter on Opus 127, so the string quartet, and it's yeah, it's a 30-second note. Um, it's in the second variation, measure 10, and Beethoven goes in great detail explaining it first in the thorough bass. So he says this is a 6/4, and he writes everything you need to know about this 30-second note in this letter. Just fantastic.